Ooh, this is interesting.
Oh, this looks rich. I mean, you've got potentially like a Hamlet poorhouse thing. I mean, Captain is great here. And Hamlet Scholar and Scrap for thinning. Lots of potential.
There's
All
one
things very significant.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
There's one centralizing thing here. And that is what you just said, the wall.
Yeah, so definitely Scrap. Coven is nasty, especially since those curses are just going to go -1 and with wall.
I'm already thinking about like getting a coven to curse them and then trashing the coven before I unexile the curses. So they're just stuck there for the rest of the game.
Yeah, that could actually work. I mean, I don't know. It depends on how valuable that is and compared to getting them into the hand, because getting however many curses into the hand is still can really mess it up unless you have a really great trashing mechanism.
I'm always hesitant to recommend Coven because like it is in general a pretty mediocre cursor, but I think I'm on board, especially with wall around and trashing being just scrap, with Coven being worth getting here. And then the problem with Coven is like if it's bad, then the correct move is just to ignore it entirely and just win before the curse is hit. But if you have to play with it, then it all of a sudden becomes centralizing, because then you kind of have to race to it, because then it gets really bad all of a sudden, and you want to beat your opponent to the punch. And so I would think that here you probably do prioritize early Covens.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you're playing with Scholar Draw, then Covens end up being your payload here.
Yeah. Now that being said, last time I was commentating a match, I forget which match it was. I mean, there was a similar kingdom where like there was Coven around, and the trashing was like okay, and the kingdom was like okay, and I was like, yeah, it seems like you got to get Coven here. And Haka was expecting, it's like, nah, you don't get Coven here. And so we played it after the fact, and yeah, sure enough, skipping Coven won 2 in a row when we tested it. So there's almost always something to be said. Like whenever you see Coven, just like think like, is it possible to get the engine up and running before the curses hit my deck? And if it is, you often do that instead. Here, I still think I'd get Coven, but it's always something to think about.
I think Coven is good here.
So this seems coin horse here by a captain.
Yes.
What's on top of your deck? If you know it's treasures, you could do card horse.
I have not tracked their deck that closely.
Definitely don't want silvers.
Silver is
just scrapping them, but Captain.
Oh
please.
no! Oh, well, it's time for my my classic commentary. Don't buy golds, please. Don't buy golds. Golds are so overrated.
Captain is so great here.
Do you think Truffles put that question in the Final 8 interview just because she knew that you had one?
I'm very strongly suspicious because it was like in the prompt. It was like, for example, don't buy golds. It's just the classic mistake all the new players make. Actually, this actually came up in one of the games earlier, but it passed by before I could say anything. It was the one where they're buying too many silvers in the Apprentice game. Someone bought a gold and it was bad. Gold, it's just the problem is like you buy silver often because you need it as like a stepping stone to get to the cards you really want. Like in this case, Coven or Captain. The problem with gold is that it costs as much as or more than the cards that are actually good. And so almost anytime you're buying gold, you could be buying something that's actually good for your deck. Gold, on the other hand, is like a stop card that gets in the way of you drawing things. So, for example, every gold in your deck makes you less likely to play your Covens frequently, less likely to play your Captains frequently, because the golds are getting in the way.
And if you think about it, the Captain you can play as Bard twice, so you're getting 4 money out of it for a single play. Now that, you can only play it once every other turn, but, it is just a tremendously powerful card here. You've got a Village, you've got Bard, you've got Scrap, you've got Hamlet. Like, there's all sorts of things you can play it as. I certainly want to be playing here. This is another kingdom.
Oh, that just hurt my heart.
This is painful.
$9 on a gold.
This is another kingdom, I think, where I might never buy a silver. I might happen to gain one off Scrap at some moment. But I would consider opening Scrap, Bard, and...
Scrap seems...
and then...
On 6, you're buying Coven or Captain. But on 8, or in this case 9, pathfinding is so good. So good. It doesn't even matter what you pathfind. Pathfind anything.
Oh, yeah.
Really good.
I was thinking at the beginning you'd pathfind Blessed Village, but DZ, yeah, DZ thinks pathfinding on Coven is good. Yeah, I mean, maybe they are thinking this is one of those kingdoms where they get all their Coven stuff happens, and then they're able to win out on provinces before the curses hit.
Yeah, I mean, Pathfind, Coven, Blessed Village, Hamlet, maybe even Captain. Oh, that one's a duration, which kind of makes it a bit worse. Honestly, like whatever action card you have in your deck, Pathfinding on it would be great.
Well, there's 5 Covens gone, so
yeah,
I don't know if they're not prioritizing it. I don't think they're prioritizing Wall. I mean, just look at the score. TasteHumanity has 2 provinces but -1 point. So
I mean,
an important thing to think about here is like, if you want to prioritize Coven, you should prioritize not just getting Covens into your deck, but also playing them frequently, and they're not doing that. So, for example, if you buy Covens, but then otherwise spend all of your other buys clicking on golds and provinces and whatnot, you're not going to play those Covens very often because they're going to be mired in a sea of treasures. If you're prioritizing giving the curses out, you want to see those Covens as frequently as possible. So it means you should be playing with like scraps, and you should be scrapping your stuff into horses for draw, not silvers for money. And then that deck is going to cycle through itself a lot faster. And so if you have 2 Covens in your deck, you're playing them every 2 or 3 turns instead of 4 or 5 turns.
I was thinking if I'm playing this kingdom, there's a decent chance that I get to the end of the game and I have not bought or gained a single treasure card on this kingdom.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Maybe you get a silver. Yeah, again, maybe you scrap to a silver at some opportune moment because it lets you hit a really good price point, and then you scrap that silver, soon afterwards. But most of the time, I'm going to be scrapping for horses and playing bards and covens for money. And I would probably have a huge stack of Blessed Villages and Captains. I guess with Captain, you don't need that many Blessed Villages. But
yeah, I was originally when I saw this, like, but obviously work better without Wall, but I think it still might work is if you get a scrap Hamlet Poorhouse Captain synergy, maybe that would work.
Yeah, Poorhouse is not bad.
It takes a lot of extra. I mean, you've got to get your engine online to play scrap on coppers. It's the only thing, but it is worth a VP, and it thins your deck every time you do that. So I think I'm generally on board. Whether or not you get the Poorhouses is maybe situational.
Mm-hmm. Two things that make that potentially more considerable. The first is Hamlet can at least discard some of the coppers out of your hand, even if you can't have trashed them all already. Yeah. And then secondly, maybe the best way to play the Poorhouses is not to get the Poorhouse so much as to get the Captain, and then you can choose when the correct moment is to play Poorhouse compared to, say, Bard in a scenario where you still have treasures in your hand.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And the Captain does get the plus card with Pathfinding. Mm-hmm. So if you put Pathfinding on Hamlet or Blessed Village, then when you captain that card, you get the plus card as well. Yep. And again, say you get 6 Hamlets that end up being mostly labs, and that's -6 VP, but they're going to enable you to hit province many more times, as well as to play Coven many more times.
Yep.
There's a Poorhouse, and I do like the Pathfinding Coven. I mean, it's just better than a province because you don't get the province into your deck and don't get the minus points, and it's just improving your covens, obviously. So I want to play that scrap there. I probably would have played that Captain as a Hamlet. Maybe get a buy, but that seems fine.
So we're about to see what happens in Coven games is the curses are about to drop, and then the decks are going to look a lot worse. And
I really do not think you should be buying provinces before the curses are out. This is kind of similar to the Torturer game, perhaps even more acute because of Wall. So, like, province is worth 5 points with Wall around. Giving your opponent 2 Covens, or not 2 Covens, giving your opponent 2 curses is worth 4 points for you. So almost as much. Except now your opponent has 2 more bad cards in their deck instead of you having 1 bad card in yours. So like it's like a 3-card differential in terms of deck quality for 1 less victory point. And so if you win the curse split, even like 6-4 over 5-5, that's better than having an extra province.
Getting a 12 there is very unfortunate.
You can't dominate.
Yeah, that was a bit unlucky that all the golds were in the same hand. To be fair,
it's a bit unlucky that there were golds on the deck to be in that hand.
That is also true. And that's what they mean when you say you make your shuffle luck, is you say, well, I've got all these treasures, they're kind of clumping together. Well, that's going to kind of naturally happen. You're not going to get an even distribution of treasures across your deck, but if you have a bunch of villagers and action cards, you can play them all every turn. And you have a much higher chance of having a reliable deck here.
You surely trash copper there. I mean, not like it's really going to matter, but that's definitely something you want to do. I mean, it's basically +1 point.
Yeah, and so I think the other thing is, on a kingdom, if you look and say, hey, there are good 3 and 4 cost cards. Actually, there's potentially good 1 and 2 cost cards. If there are good 3 and 4 cost cards, you want to prioritize getting captains online quickly.
Yeah, well, this wins. Poorhouse or Bard.
Yep. We like Poorhouse. Poorhouse is the stylish play, but
Yes.
Bard works just as well. So that's 4-1 for ElZorro. They're playing a pretty good match here.
Not that it was relevant with that amount of points lead, but Poorhouse also doesn't have the risk of giving you like a random silver or wisp and then knocking you down by 1 point in terms of wall.
Yeah, if that would have mattered, then Poorhouse would have been a better play.
Yep, and you think, oh, that's an obscure corner case, but I've lost games like that before, and I've seen players take a long time and figure out which boon is coming up next to make sure that's not the case.
Yep.
Okay. Any final thoughts while we're waiting for Game 6 to start?
I think so.
I think that was the case where they didn't sufficiently prioritize maintaining control of their decks. I think you want to get as thin as you can. You're probably never going to get fully thin on a deck like that with just scrap. But a thinner deck is going to play more covenants, give out more curses, and then even if you're behind the provinces, you'll be way ahead in points in terms of wall.
Yeah, and every gold buy there should have been a captain, and probably every silver buy could have been a scrap or a bard or a blessed village.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that's it for Game 5, and I'll see you all in Game 6.